Welcome to the first Trips and Traps of the new year. It's January 5th. He's Richard Migliori. I'm Andy Sterling.
I think an interesting trips and traps from a perspective. I think track bias is going to be a major topic, and I don't know how you feel about bias. Is it something that bugs you or something that you try to take advantage of?
Well, it's hard for me to, it bugs me. It's frustrating at times,
right.
I think, because you come in wanting to play horses, you have to readjust. You have to, it's very tough to try to decide who's necessarily going to be able to take advantage of a bias during a race. But I think it's very important to watch the races as frequently as possible and to figure out horses you want to bet on that had tough trips.
Well, and as somebody playing horses, it's like you're a quarterback going to the line of scrimmage and the defense is line up different. You got to call an audible.
Yeah, you do. You have to be willing to call audibles. You have to be willing to step aside from horses you've sort of committed to. And we'll talk about some races where we felt horses were helped by the racetrack and hurt by the racetrack. And we'll start out with the Damon RUNYON, the 8th race from December 29th, where, first of all, Malika, the favorite, gets in trouble at the start, breaks a little stow, stayed back. Haul anchor with Cornelio Velasquez. This is when a rider is committed to making the front. Doesn't break that sharply, but Cornelio says, no, I'm going. The guy on the 8 wants to lead, who ends up finishing second, but Cornelio says, I'm not giving it to you. Malika is trying to split horses and get in the middle, Richie, but this race was a classic merry-go-round, and Malika was the one who lost all chance because of the break, if nothing else.
Well, he did, and he had run on his mind into the turn after not breaking well, and the die was cast at that point. Jose Ortiz had no choice but to steady him along. And I think you're exactly right. Cornelio Velasquez's aggression in the turn, not allowing Mo Maverick to clear, because if Mo Maverick clears him, it's a completely different race.
Absolutely. It's amazing how different, you could make so many different scenarios to how this race could have played out. I have a question for you as a rider. You're right. Listen, you rode the inner a lot, and there were times, especially back in the day. Lately, we haven't had as many biases. What did you do as a rider when you were riding a horse that you knew was going to be likely be compromised badly by the racetrack?
Well, there were certain horses that you knew you could wind them up and change their style a little bit. Most horses, though, they have a style, and you have to dance with the girl that brought you there. But there were a few cases where people didn't expect me to show speed on certain horses, and if you take everybody off guard, sometimes you get things a little soft.
Right, especially races where sometimes it's races where people think there's a lot of speed, that you could be the sneakiest. It's the ones, it seems, where there's no speed lined up, that 3 or 4 guys get the ideas, and you see surprising paces. As you look at this race, the only horses that basically changed positions during the running were the 3rd and 4th horses, who barely changed positions in the stretch.
Yeah, and I think it's interesting, when we talk about tracks playing kind to speed, I think there's a number of reasons behind that, Andy. One, they're not getting the kickback. The horse on the lead he's getting the shortest path around anyway. If the inside's a fast path, now it's an advantage because he's going the shortest distance, and he's not getting hit with that kickback, which comes back extremely hard on the inner track, harder than any of the other Naira tracks.
Especially when it's like this, which was pretty
particularly in the mud with young horses, horses that are just turning 3, right. Don't have a lot of experience, and you could just see how some of them really resent it. And I think there's more than just one reason why a track will play favorable to speed.
Well, I'm more of a believer in path biases, because it makes much more sense when you think about it. Yet there are tracks where it's undeniable that closing and kickback certainly has to be considered one of the major factors, if not the major factor.
Well, we're going to look at a race, I think our last race, where I think the path was distinct.
Yes, paths became extreme later. We'll look at a race from the next day. And actually, I think on the 30th, the track was somewhat more fair, but even besides that, I think it was very difficult to close. Speed was good. Benevolence was supposed to be part of the pace. And some people asked me, why was Benevolence back in last? Well, Benevolence breaks on it, sort of stumbling a little bit, gets bumped inside, and this was not Eric Cancel's fault. There was nothing he could do.
No, he got stymied at the break, and they don't have distinct lanes that they don't deviate from. We see some pretty ragged breaks at time, and that one, he just got bounced around.
He did, and you just see him. He's basically taken back to last, except for that horse. We also want to talk about the 2 Sky Chaparral, because this was kind of what I was asking you before. Sky Chaparral is between a rock and a hard place. First time off the claim for David Jacobson, and he must have told Angel Arroyo, this horse is a bit of a deep closer. You got to get him in the race or he can't win. But sometimes you take a horse very much out of its running style, it will considerably mitigate its closing kick.
Yeah, and this is a horse I definitely would want to play back on a fairer racetrack.
Sky Chaparral.
And turning back to his style. But you know what? I don't blame Angel Arroyo. I would prefer a rider to try to do something to make a horse win as opposed to being, complacent.
He's riding him to get him to stay in the race here.
And he's got a great position. I mean, that's the inner track position, really, right? If you're on a closer, you want to be stalking in the pocket. And Samadhi Sky winds up getting the perfect trip on two horses that dueled themselves into defeat.
I agree. He ran today. He ran much better, Samadhi Sky, clear of horses on the outside. He didn't run well inside of horse the time before. I think Sky Chaparral will appear to a lot of people not to have run well, and I understand that argument, but I really think he was taken out of his game because of the racetrack, and I don't blame the connections. Benevolence actually made a little bit of a run for fifth. I mean, nothing major, but Benevolence, it's just one of those bad luck things. He was supposed to be part of the pace. Who knows what he would have done if he had been, but he was compromised by the break.
Well, Sky Chaparral was taken out of his normal style to try to fit the track,
sure.
And he had a good trip. He just wasn't his style. Benevolence was taken out of his style because he was jammed at the break. So I think in some ways he ran just as good a race as Sky Chaparral.
Arguably, he ran a better race. On the surface of things, he ran a better race. These are two horses that you can at least take a look at and perhaps dismiss these efforts. And if you like them next time they run, X these efforts, then they fit.
Yeah, I think they both had excuses. And just quickly, let's talk about Saratoga Giro. I thought had an opportunity potentially to clear, and I think he would have been better served clearing and trying to open up a little bit.
I agree, and if riders are going to come here from out of town, you got to be ready to be aggressive. I mean, I agree. Saratoga Giro, he clears, he probably wins.
Yeah, and it looked to me as though the second place runner, Fratello del Nord, Irad Ortiz Jr., was looking to allow him to do so. He just didn't take advantage of it.
Right, and it ended up working against him as he finished third in there. January 31st, that was Saturday. That was an extreme gold rail. And we're going to take a look at a couple races where winners took advantage of it. We're looking at some horses compromised. Now, I don't think Will Did It was badly compromised, though he ends up a bit wide. But Jan's Reserve, a dead closer, breaks a length slow. Manny Franco tries to do everything he can, but the winner, the 5, is able to clear the lead. He might have been one of the best horses anyway, but once he gets to the front, it's over. Jan's Reserve ran a winning race. He was badly compromised by the break and the dynamics.
Yeah, and then he finally kind of catches his stride and kind of starts taking Manny Franco into the race. And now he gets up closer, and I don't know if in here he starts climbing again from the kickback, or he's starting to run up on heels a little too quickly. Yeah. But you could see how his stride changed. His head came up, and he just didn't look as comfortable as he got closer to the pack.
I thought he ran up into horses a little bit, and Manny had to put the brakes on so he wouldn't run up on heels.
Yeah, but he still had some separation. That's why I just question why, unless he just thought he was taking him with so much momentum that the next thing he was going to be right on top of them.
Well, he ends up in the 2-path, and Manny's trying to do what he can to save as much ground as possible. You see him, he's even angling in, because in a normal situation, he would want to be all the way on the outside in the clear. But he's thinking, I've got to stay towards the inside and do this. But now there's no room. He's not really responding. Manny says, all right, there's nothing I can do. I got to take him the outside of the clear. And on this racetrack, in this situation, he has no chance. Jan's Reserve has now run 2 straight good races. Both of them hurt, one by a trip and one by dynamics and the racetrack. This is a horse, I hope he can continue his good form because he's really sitting on the win.
He really is. He was very unlucky. And besides having to switch paths, having to do it so abruptly, it's hard for a horse to catch their stride again, and he was running on again late. To me, he's a horse that I definitely need to follow.
All right, Jan's Reserve has been unlucky. He deserves to have his day. Now, the 7th race from December 31st. First of all, we're going to give the award of the year to Aaron Grider for his ride in the winter, who did everything a rider could possibly do to get to the rail and take advantage but never leave it. The 8-row bear who we'll look at out here, and the 11, Here Comes Tommy, and I know Here Comes Tommy never wins, but I got to tell you, both of these horses are going to be badly compromised by the racetrack, and this is the 2nd time in a row Here Comes Tommy has gotten an outside post, been wide against a gold rail, and really run a very gutsy race. Now, he's going to disappoint everybody next time because he'll hang again with a perfect trip, but he is a really admirable racehorse.
Oh, he really is. And listen, as an owner, you love to have him. He gets checks all the time. He's earned a lot of money without getting his picture taken.
Aaron cuts the lead, cuts over the rail.
I got to get back to that for a second. Even the move, kind of angling out and getting some momentum and swooping in, that's just brilliant. This was, the ride completely made the difference here. Aaron Grider won this race.
Right, and this is a good example when we get frustrated when a horse can have the lead and riders don't want to get the lead on speed tracks to explain what difference it can make. Because honestly, the winner of this race could have finished last if Aaron had decided to stalk and sit comfortably outside the 3, and Papa Shop probably would have won because he ran very well. Aaron's hugging the rail and he's riding every step of the way. poor Here Comes Tommy has never gotten inside of the 3 path. He's been in the 4 and 5 path a lot of it. He's going to clear off. Robert is going to sort of sit behind to save some ground. Here Comes Tommy's now gone 3 wide. Robert is behind him, but he's going to go 3 wide too. Both of these horses were compromised. Robert has been compromised 2 times in a row as well. The problem Here Comes Tommy is he never wins, but man, does he deserve to get lucky?
Well, he ran a winning race here, but you know, he was just unlucky with the post, and you could read Mike Luzzy's mind after the break. He's trying to get back enough to tuck in, and he just never could find that gap. And
he's still running.
And he's still running, and he ran on. But the problem is, with perfect trips, he's gotten to this position and kind of just stayed that one pace there.
You know what Here Comes Tommy deserves, and this is a terrible thing to say as a horse player. He deserves to finish second as some horse that fouled a horse that finished behind him and get placed first. Now, I hope if that happens, I'm not involved in the race. But talk about a horse that deserves to get lucky to win, because he does make his own problems sometime, but he has run incredibly 2 times in a row.
Well, years ago, I used to ride a horse that was just like Here Comes Tommy, second or third all the time, get there and kind of hang. And one day a horse stumbled, the rider came off, and he very happily chased the loose horse around there and finished second. But he won because that horse didn't count. So maybe he needs a scenario like that.
Sometimes we all, humans at equines, need a break. We could always use some help. It's Trips and Traps at NYRAInc.com.